Caught my spoiled sister kissing my BF a week before her wedding. Reddit Family Tales. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. Emily hadn't planned on staying long. She'd just stopped by her parents' place to grab her sunglasses, which she'd forgotten after Sunday dinner. The house was quiet, most of the lights already off, and the warm evening air smelled faintly of cut grass. She let herself through the side gate into the backyard, figuring it was quicker than going through the front door. She wasn't expecting anyone to be out there. As she rounded the corner, she froze. A few feet away, near the back wall of the house, Chloe stood pressed against Ryan. His hand was at her waist, their faces so close they almost looked like one silhouette in the dim light. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick, awkward kiss. It was slow, familiar, practiced. Emily's breath caught so sharply she almost coughed. Her body wouldn't move. Her mind kept telling her she was seeing it wrong, but her eyes refused to lie. Ryan, her boyfriend of nearly 2 years, and Chloe, her younger sister, the one who was supposed to be getting married in 7 days, were tangled together like no one else in the world existed. Ryan pulled back first, his expression flickering when his eyes caught her. Guilt. Shock. Something that looked almost like fear. But Chloe didn't flinch. She didn't step away or cover her mouth. She looked straight at Emily with a little half-smile, almost lazy, like she'd just been caught stealing the last cookie from the jar and was daring anyone to scold her. Emily felt her pulse pounding in her ears. Words wouldn't form. Her hands shook, and she shoved them into her pockets so they wouldn't see. Every muscle screamed to either run or scream, but she stood still, the cool night pressing against her skin. Ryan started to say something. But Emily turned and walked away before he could finish. She didn't slam the gate, didn't yell, didn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. Her car felt like a safe place, but her chest hurt so badly it made her grip the steering wheel harder than she should. The image replayed in her mind over and over, his hand on Chloe's waist, the way Chloe's eyes didn't show a trace of shame. As she drove off, she could already hear her parents' voices in her head, the way they'd excuse Chloe like they always did. She knew if she stormed back in there now, she'd be the one accused of overreacting. So she kept driving, jaw tight, heart pounding. Whatever this was, it had been going on long enough for them to be comfortable doing it in her parents' backyard. And that meant she was going to find out exactly how deep this went before either of them saw it coming. Emily didn't stop driving until she reached her apartment. She pulled into her parking spot and sat there for a moment, the car engine ticking in the quiet night. Her hands were still tight on the steering wheel, her nails pressing into her palm. She forced herself to breathe slowly before finally stepping out and heading inside. The apartment felt too still, the kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder. She kicked off her shoes and tossed her bag on the couch, but her mind wouldn't settle. Every detail from the backyard replayed in her head, the way they'd stood close, how relaxed they seemed with each other. This wasn't some drunken mistake at a party. It had a rhythm to it, a comfort. That kind of closeness didn't happen overnight. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Ryan's name lit up the screen. You mad about something? The casual tone made her stomach turn. He had no idea how obvious he'd been. She set the phone face down without answering. She needed more than what she'd seen. She needed something no one could argue with. Emily grabbed her laptop and opened her social media accounts first. She started scrolling through old photos, looking for moments she might have missed. Sure enough, there were hints, little things she'd brushed off before. Chloe and Ryan standing closer than necessary in group shots. Inside jokes in the comments that didn't quite make sense to anyone else. A few likes and emojis on posts that felt too personal. It wasn't enough to prove anything yet, but it was enough to keep her going. She switched to her messages with Ryan, skimming through the past few months. She noticed small gaps, times when he'd taken hours to reply, claiming he was busy or out with friends. She remembered those nights now. Chloe had often been busy too, skipping family dinners or showing up late. Emily dug deeper. She logged into the shared streaming account they both used. She noticed activity at strange hours, shows started but never finished. She knew his habits well enough to know he didn't watch those alone. The more she looked, the more the pieces lined up in her mind. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was planned, repeated, and hidden just well enough to make her doubt herself, until now. She finally picked up her phone again, but instead of answering Ryan's text, she opened his Instagram and began scrolling through the posts he'd been tagged in. A picture from 2 months ago stopped her cold. It was a group selfie at a bar. Chloe and Ryan were both in it, leaning in from opposite sides, but their knees were touching under the table. She took a screenshot and saved it. One piece of evidence down. Emily knew she was only getting started. She had no intention of confronting them empty-handed. If she played this right, there would be no denying what they'd done. Not to her, not to anyone. Emily waited until she was sure Ryan was at work before she moved to the next step. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and signed into his email. He'd given her the password months ago for something small, and he'd never changed it. She felt a tight knot in her chest as the inbox loaded. At first, it looked like nothing. Bills, newsletters, work updates. But then she noticed a folder he'd labeled receipts. It didn't take long to see it wasn't just for purchases. There were confirmations from a downtown hotel. Same place, different dates, all spaced out over the past few months. Each one showed a check-in for 2 people. Her stomach twisted. She opened them one by one, checking the dates. At least 3 months' worth. The times matched nights he'd told her he was working late or hanging out with friends. She moved to his sent folder and searched Chloe's name. No results, but she knew he wasn't that careless. She tried a few keywords instead. Baby, miss you. Fun. That's when she found them. Flirty messages, some short and teasing, some describing what they'd do the next time they met. A few included pictures. Nothing too revealing, but enough to make her skin crawl. Emily's hands felt cold as she copied everything into a folder on her own computer. She didn't stop there. She checked his ride history from a car maintenance app they both used. The mileage didn't match his stories. He'd been putting hundreds of extra miles on her car, mostly on days she'd been at work. When she checked the routes, they ended right near Chloe's apartment. Her breathing grew uneven. She leaned back for a moment, pressing her fingers to her eyes, trying to block out the images in her head. Then she remembered something else. Chloe had once borrowed Emily's phone to send herself a file, and Emily had never deleted the synced contacts. She opened an old group chat Chloe had with a friend named Lacey. Most of it was harmless, but she kept scrolling until she found the part that made her blood run cold, Chloe mocking her. There were jokes about Emily's clothes, about her boring dates with Ryan. Even a message saying she thinks he's faithful. It's almost cute. Lacey had replied with laughing emojis. Emily's first instinct was to slam the laptop shut and call someone, anyone, just to unload. But she didn't. She forced herself to stay quiet. Her family had always been quick to twist her words, to make her look like the jealous older sister. If she went in unprepared, they'd make her the problem again. She closed the chat, saved every file, and sat in the dark for a long time. She wasn't going to rush this. When she finally exposed them, it would be in a way they could never undo. Emily didn't have to think hard to know exactly how this would play out if she called Chloe right now. She'd heard it all before. Her parents would sigh, tell her she was overreacting, then rush to defend Chloe. It had been that way for as long as she could remember. When Chloe was 16, she borrowed Emily's car without asking and crashed it into a fence. Emily had been the one grounded for leaving her keys out. A year later, Chloe took a dress Emily had bought for a college formal, spilled wine on it, and laughed when Emily asked for an apology. Their parents said it was just clothes and told Emily to stop making a scene. Even worse were the rumors. In high school, Chloe told people Emily had been caught cheating on a test. It wasn't true, but by the time Emily found out, it had already spread. When she asked why Chloe did it, Chloe shrugged and said, "People believe what they want." Their parents brushed it off as sister drama and told Emily to be the bigger person. It had been years of this same pattern, Chloe causing the damage, Emily taking the blame. She'd learned to keep her guard up, but nothing had prepared her for it. If she simply went to her parents with the messages and photos now, she knew what would happen. They'd claim it was a misunderstanding, twist the story until she looked like she was jealous of Chloe's happy life. Even if they believed her for a moment, they'd still find a way to excuse it. But this time, Emily wasn't going to give them the chance. She didn't want a quiet family argument behind closed doors. She wanted the truth to hit hard, in a way that couldn't be softened or spun. She thought about the wedding, about the rows of guests, the fancy decorations, the speeches, the pictures Chloe had been bragging about for months. The image of Chloe standing there in her perfect white dress, smiling like she had it all, made Emily's jaw tighten. That picture needed to shatter. Not because Emily wanted to ruin a wedding for fun, but because Chloe had spent her life getting away with everything. This time, the fallout needed to be public. It needed to be something no one could pretend hadn't happened. Emily started picturing the moment in her head. Chloe's face when she realized everyone knew, when there was nowhere to hide. It wouldn't be enough to just tell people. She'd have to show them. Evidence. Timing. A setting where Chloe couldn't slip away before the damage was done. She leaned back in her chair, letting the idea take shape. Every decision from this point on would lead to that single moment. If Chloe wanted to play games, Emily would end them in front of everyone she cared about. And this time, no one would call her dramatic. They'd call her right. Emily knew there was only one person who deserved to see what she had before anyone else, Mark. If anyone had more to lose than her, it was him. He was just days away from marrying Chloe, completely unaware of what was going on behind his back. She picked up her phone and typed a short message. Hey, I was wondering if you could help me with something for the wedding speech. Can we meet in person? It was vague enough not to raise suspicion if Chloe saw it, but direct enough that Mark would take it seriously. A few minutes later, he replied, Sure. When? They settled on the next afternoon, at a quiet coffee shop across town, somewhere Chloe wouldn't be likely to wander into. When Emily walked in, Mark was already there, sitting at a small table by the window. He looked relaxed at first, smiling as he waved her over, but the moment she sat down, she could feel her hands trembling. This wasn't going to be easy to say out loud. She didn't waste time. Mark, I didn't actually ask you here for speech help. I need to show you something, and I'm sorry in advance. His smile faded. Okay, what is it? Emily slid her laptop out of her bag and opened the folder she'd made. One by one, she clicked through the screenshots, the hotel receipts, the messages, the photos. She kept her voice steady as she explained the dates and details, showing how everything lined up. Mark leaned forward, his eyes scanning each image. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to something harder. By the time she finished, his face was pale, his jaw tight. He sat back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. How long have you known? Not long, Emily said. But I couldn't let you go through with the wedding without knowing. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just looked out the window, like he was trying to collect himself. Finally, he turned back to her. Thank you for telling me. I wish I didn't have to see this, but I'm glad I know now. Emily hesitated. I don't want to tell my family until I know it can't be buried. They'll find a way to excuse it if it's just me saying it. Mark nodded slowly. Then let me handle it. Give me a few days. I promise, when it comes out, there won't be any doubt. She won't be able to spin it. Emily studied him for a moment, weighing whether she could trust him to follow through. The determined look in his eyes told her she could. She closed the laptop and slid it back into her bag. All right, we'll do it your way. They left the coffee shop separately, but Emily knew they were now on the same side. Whatever Mark had planned, it was going to hurt, and Chloe wouldn't see it coming. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private room at a nice restaurant. The walls were lined with white tablecloth-covered tables, candles flickering in the center of each one. Laughter and the clink of glasses filled the air as waiters moved between guests carrying trays of food. Emily sat near the middle, her parents to one side, bridesmaids to the other. Chloe was glowing in a fitted white dress, holding Mark's arm like everything in the world was perfect. Emily kept her face neutral. She knew what was coming. Halfway through the evening, Mark stood up and tapped his glass with a fork. The chatter slowly quieted. I just want to say a few words, he began, smiling at the crowd. Normally, this is the part where I'd talk about how much I love my future wife. But tonight, I think the truth is more important. A murmur rippled through the room. Chloe's smile faltered. Mark gestured toward the small projector set up in the corner. Some of you may not know this, but the past few months have been educational for me. I learned a lot about trust, about honesty, and about what people are really doing when they say they're somewhere else. He clicked the laptop. The first image appeared on the screen, a hotel receipt. Then another. Then a series of text messages, each one clear and unmistakable. Flirty lines, plans to meet, photos Chloe had sent. Her name was visible at the top of every screenshot. Gasps filled the room. People shifted in their seats, whispering. A bridesmaid covered her mouth. Emily's mother's eyes went wide. Chloe shot out of her chair. Turn it off, Mark. Now! She stormed toward the projector, but he stepped between her and the table. I think everyone deserves to see this, he said calmly. Chloe's voice rose. Stop it. This is fake. She reached for the laptop, but Mark kept his hand firm on it. Ryan, sitting 2 tables away, had gone pale. He pushed his chair back quietly, slipped behind the guests, and headed for the side door without a word. The images kept coming, more messages, more proof. There was no mistaking who was in them or what they meant. Chloe's screams turned desperate. Mark, please. We can talk about this. But he didn't stop until the last screenshot faded from the screen. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Mark closed the laptop slowly. The wedding is off. Thank you all for coming tonight. Dinner's still paid for, so enjoy. Emily stayed in her seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes wide like everyone else's. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, at least, not on the outside. Inside, she felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing Chloe's perfect image had shattered in front of everyone who once believed it. The room emptied quickly after Mark's announcement. Chairs scraped against the floor, voices rose in small bursts, and the air felt heavy with shock. Chloe was crying now, though it was hard to tell if it was from embarrassment or anger. Her bridesmaids, who had been so close to her all night, avoided her eyes as they grabbed their purses and slipped out. Emily stayed seated, watching it all without speaking. She could feel her parents' eyes on her before they even said anything. Her mother came over first, her voice low but sharp. What did you do? Emily blinked at her. I didn't do anything. You must have told him, her father said, stepping in. You've always been jealous of Chloe, but this is too far. Before Emily could answer, Mark walked up, his voice steady but firm. No, she didn't ruin anything. Chloe did. Emily just told me the truth, and I'm grateful she did. Her parents didn't respond, but their frowns said enough. They turned away, following Chloe out the door, their arms wrapped protectively around her. By the next morning, the story had already spread. Guests from the rehearsal dinner posted vague, but dramatic updates online. Biggest wedding disaster I've ever seen. Rehearsal dinner turned into a scandal. Can't believe what I just witnessed. Nobody posted the actual screenshots, but they didn't have to. The hints were enough to send the gossip run. Emily's phone buzzed with messages from friends who had heard pieces of the story and wanted detail. She ignored most of them. She wasn't going to feed the rumor mill. It was doing fine on its own. Then an email came through. Ryan, Emily, please hear me out. I messed up, but it wasn't what you think. Chloe came on to me. She made me believe things about us that weren't true. I was confused. I know I should have told you, but I didn't want to lose you. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Emily read it once, then again, waiting for even a trace of genuine ownership of what he'd done. It wasn't there. Just excuses. Just another attempt to dodge the weight of his choices. She closed the email without replying and moved it straight to the trash. Later that week, she saw a post from one of Chloe's former bridesmaids. A picture of an untouched wedding dress hanging in a closet captioned, "Guess it's going back to the store." The comments were filled with jokes, sympathy, and thinly veiled curiosity. Emily didn't comment. She didn't need to. The truth was already out there, and Chloe's perfect bride image was gone. The wedding wasn't just canceled. The story of how it ended would follow her for years, and Emily didn't have to lift another finger. A few days passed before Emily heard anything new. She was sitting on her couch one evening when her phone lit up with a call from Jenna, a mutual friend who had been at the rehearsal dinner. Jenna didn't bother with small talk. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Ryan wasn't the only one. Emily's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Jenna lowered her voice, even though they were on the phone. Chloe was seeing at least 2 other guys while she was engaged. One of them is a married groomsman. His wife just found out, and it's ugly. Everyone in their friend group is talking about it. Emily leaned back against the cushions, letting the words sink in. She'd thought the betrayal had already reached its peak, but apparently Chloe's web of lies was even bigger. And the other guy? Some guy she met at the gym. Supposedly, she was meeting him during lunch breaks. It's all over group chats now. People are swapping screenshots and stories. By the next morning, Emily saw proof for herself. Posts on private social media groups hinted at the mess without naming names outright, but anyone who knew Chloe could connect the dots. Comments piled up under vague captions like, "Some people never change," and 3 strikes in one engagement. Impressive. The married groomsman's wife, furious and humiliated, had apparently confronted Chloe in person, and that confrontation had its own audience. Word of it spread just as fast as the original scandal. Emily's parents had stayed quiet since the rehearsal dinner, but that changed after this. When she stopped by their house to drop something off, her mother's tone was noticeably softer. "Your sister's made mistakes," she said, avoiding eye contact. "We didn't realize how bad it was." Her father sighed. "We can't defend what she's done. Not anymore. It's just a lot to take in." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing Emily had ever heard from them in situations involving Chloe. She didn't push it. Over the next week, Chloe's name became a cautionary tale in their social circle. Invitations she'd been excited about disappeared. People stopped returning her calls. The bridesmaids who had once posted endless photos with her quietly deleted most of them. Emily didn't have to say a word for Chloe's image to crumble completely. The more the truth came out, the clearer it became that her sister's fall wasn't just about Ryan. This was a pattern, and now everyone could see it. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like she was the one being compared or overshadowed. Chloe wasn't the untouchable golden child anymore. She was just another name people whispered about, and not in the way she'd built her life to be remembered. Emily was halfway through her coffee at a small corner table when she saw Chloe walk in. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, but they didn't hide the tension in her jaw. Chloe spotted her instantly and came straight over, heels clicking against the floor. She didn't sit. She leaned forward, her voice sharp but low. "You destroyed my life." Emily set her cup down, meeting her gaze without flinching. "No, Chloe. You did that yourself." Chloe's lips pressed into a thin line. "You could have kept your mouth shut. You didn't have to tell Mark. You didn't have to make it public." "I didn't make anything public," Emily said evenly. "I showed the truth to the person who deserved to know it. Everything else, that's just the result of your own choices." Chloe shook her head. "You've always hated me. This was your chance to take me down, and you took it." Emily's voice stayed calm. "I stopped covering for you. That's all. I'm done cleaning up your messes while you act like nothing's your fault. A couple at the next table had started glancing over. Chloe noticed and straightened, her tone rising slightly. You think you're better than me now? You think this makes you some kind of hero? Emily didn't raise her voice. No, it just makes me free. I don't have to live under your shadow anymore. Chloe's hands tightened into fists at her sides. You have no idea what you've done to me. Emily gave a small shrug. I think I do. You just don't like that everyone else finally sees it too. For a moment, Chloe looked like she might say more, but then she spun around and stormed out. The door banged shut behind her, making a few people jump. Emily could feel the eyes on her. A couple of customers whispered to each other, their glances shifting between the door and Emily's table. She didn't care what they thought. She picked up her coffee again and took another sip, her heartbeat finally starting to settle. There was no gloating, no rush of victory, just a strange, quiet lightness in her chest. The kind that came from not having to defend herself against the same exhausting cycle. For years, she'd been the one blamed, the one told to keep the peace. Now, for the first time, she wasn't carrying Chloe's secrets or damage. Chloe would have to deal with the mess she made, and Emily had no part in fixing it. She finished her drink, dropped a few bills on the table, and stepped outside into the cool air. The day felt different somehow. Not because Chloe was gone, but because Emily was finally standing on her own, with nothing left to hide. 6 months passed before Emily heard any real news about Chloe. It came from a cousin during a casual phone call. She's not here anymore, the cousin said. Packed up and moved to another city. Word is, she's working at some retail place. Not much money. Your parents stopped sending her anything. Emily listened without much reaction. She wasn't surprised. Chloe had burned too many bridges for comfort to be an option anymore. Moving away was probably the only way she could avoid the stares and whispers. Life for Emily had changed too, but in a different way. Without Chloe's chaos pulling at her, she had time and energy to focus on herself. She'd been thinking for years about starting her own business, something small but hers, and she finally did it. It wasn't easy, but it felt like progress every single day. She was making choices for herself instead of reacting to someone else's mess. One morning, she found an envelope in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a short handwritten note. Emily, I owe you more than I can ever say. Thank you for saving me from a lifetime with a liar. I'm happier now than I ever thought I'd be. Wishing you the best in everything. Mark. She read it twice before folding it carefully and setting it on her desk. Mark didn't owe her thanks. She'd just done what she felt was right. But knowing he had built something better for himself after all of it made the whole mess feel less bitter. The betrayal still came back to her sometimes, usually late at night when she was alone with her thoughts. It wasn't something that could be erased. But instead of leaving her feeling small, it reminded her why she'd taken a stand. For once, she hadn't let Chloe control the story. She had taken the truth and placed it where it couldn't be hidden. The wedding disaster had started the shift, but the months after had sealed it. Emily's business was growing. She was meeting new people, making her own plans, living in a space that felt completely hers. There were no sudden phone calls about drama, no last-minute demands to fix something she didn't break. She hadn't spoken to Chloe since the coffee shop, and she didn't expect to. If Chloe ever reached out, Emily doubted it would be to apologize. That was fine. Closure didn't have to come from Chloe's mouth. Emily had built her own. One quiet afternoon, Emily stood in her shop, looking out the front window at people passing by. She thought about where she'd been 6 months ago and where she was now. The sting of what happened was still there, but so was the deep, steady satisfaction of knowing the truth had been seen, the lies had been burned away, and she had walked away stronger than she'd ever been.